The biggest loser in the Senate bipartisan sports gambling bill is blank.
I absolutely love this topic. I've been a degenerate gambler in my past, but we don't need to talk about that. But I think the way that these prediction markets have just surged, and not just prediction markets themselves, but the samplings that they're giving, gamblers, let's just call them, specifically looking at things like the weather, sports events, which I thought we legalized sports gambling. Why are we not just doing it on Bovado or FanDuel or DraftKings? No free ads.
What color Gatorade your favorite athlete will drink during a game?
It's having real world consequences, and I think there's been hundreds of billions of dollars that have been wagered over the last several years. Pick a time frame.
Christian, what does this bill? It's coming from
Adam
Pencilneck Schiff. Just kidding. John Curtis from Utah. Obviously.
It is bipartisan. Yeah.
So what exactly would this bill do?
So we don't have a title yet. It should be introduced this week, and it's going to specifically bar federally regulated prediction market platforms from offering contracts tied to both sports gambling and casino-style games. So again, it kind of limits it to making prediction markets somewhat of a polling service, right? Who's going to win X primary and X race, right? Who's going to be the next president of the United States, things like that.
And this would be, applies to Polymarket and Kalshi, not to DraftKings,
correct,
right? Okay.
Yes.
So there's the bill itself, and then I think it's what it signifies, right? Because the bill, it's rather limited when you think about the fact that most people are doing their sports gambling on DraftKings and all of this.
Yeah.
But what it symbolizes, I think in DC, the appetite is becoming fairly bipartisan that this is a terrible idea. If you allowing people to have this sort of gambling, in effect, gambling access from their phones at all hours of the night. So just a little bit of like a historical backdrop.
Sure.
Like this, because I do think as a conservative, I do like to think like, what is the precedent? What is the English common law? What did the founders intend, right? And like part of the reason why things like prohibition were so offensive to me is because this nation was founded by brewers and distillers and drinkers, right? Gambling, not so much. The Puritans banned games of chance, going back to like 1631 in Plymouth Colony. Pennsylvania banned gambling, including cockfighting, cards, dice, billiards, and horse racing back in 1794. The idea that you should have unfettered access to gambling the same way you should have access to other vices is just not, there's not a great historical precedent for it.
Sure.
And, historically, if you wanted to gamble, if you wanted to go play poker or blackjack, you went to a desert in the middle of nowhere that was kind of prohibitive to get to. You went to...
Are you talking about Iran again? Boom.
Right? You go to Las Vegas or you go to Atlantic City.
Right.
It's very recent that we've tried to democratize access to the ability to, waste away your paycheck. So I'm going to say the biggest loser in the sports gambling bill, which again is really more about the concept of a plan than the bill itself, is, I would say, a massive state of welfare dependency and financial ruin. Because the fact is that we have ample evidence that sports gambling, and this is, again, a little different. This is sports betting in prediction markets, not just, betting on DraftKings. But again, I would hope that this would portend getting rid of some of that or dialing it back. It has been pretty devastating in terms of the negative externalities. So Northwestern Kellogg School of Business, they did a study based on like 250,000 households, and they were really curious. Is sports betting, is it crowding out other sorts of gambling? Is it just a replacement for, these are people that used to buy lottery tickets and now they're, betting on who's going to win the Super Bowl? And if that would be the case, it would actually be a little bit more of an improvement because you are slightly more likely to come out in the green or come out in the black with sports gambling than you are with lotto tickets.
Sure.
But that is not the case. They found that it's not just replacing other types of gambling, it is crowding out other much better uses of money. and it's specifically harming lower income households the most. So for every $1 spent on sports gambling, on sports betting, that's 2 fewer dollars that is being invested in accounts, right? UCLA Anderson found that the legalization of sports gambling associated with an annual increase of 30,000 bankruptcies. That's per year. So we see from a financial perspective massive amounts of externalities. At this point, if you are going into debt and your blue state bails you out, then the federal government bails out the blue state. A lot of our debt at this point is just like demand driven, right?
Sure.
So even though theoretically, if you want to do like the Scrooge McDuck libertarian thing, it's not my problem if people want to ruin their lives bankrupting themselves with sports games. But it literally is at this point, because these financial systems are so fungible that if people are not investing in retirement and instead they're wasting all their money on sports gambling, and it's not something that has the positive externalities of a political predictions market that actually does have a social purpose, right? What color Gatorade your favorite baseball player drinks is not, there's no social benefit to knowing that. The same way that there is about predicting war in Iran, or, who's going to be the Democratic presidential nominee in 28, things like that. So I would say the fact that the tide in Washington is turning to the point where you can get Adam Schiff and John Curtis, who's much more of a moderate Republican senator, but to work across the aisle saying, too much.
I like that. I mean, I'm glad you took that route, because I'm going to go very different. If you guys couldn't tell, I've pushed my notes off to the side. I'm about to take the gloves off for a second. The biggest losers, because there's more than one here, are all of these technocratic vampire overlords who are trying to bleed you and me dry. Because my problems with sports gambling and legalized sports gambling, the prevalence of DraftKings and frickin', all the apps that send you ads on any given day, on every platform, they're billing themselves as entertainment, right? Yeah. And yes, I do think the way that this industry has taken over is having a negative impact on certain sectors of the population. The way that Polymarket and Kalshi are billing themselves is wholly irresponsible, right? They are pretending to be a tool to better mankind, right? To help you be informed, and we're gonna help show what real people think about. Ultimately, this is Silicon Valley bros standing up a product to make use and just sink their fangs in to people who want to gamble no matter what, right? There are no checks on them whatsoever. If the Congress can come together and say, you guys can do that if you want, but you can't do it on sports gambling, at least, that limits degenerate gamblers' exposure to these people who really don't care about what the outcome is. They care about wealth transfer in the wrong direction from people who are just trying to escape the mundane lives that they have and get a little bit of a dopamine hit by winning $10 or whatever, betting on X. That money, instead of going into bank accounts or going to federal programs that are taxed properly to help other people, is instead going to the Palmer Luckies of the world, right? And I just think the entire gambling conversation is missing the forest for the trees, right? Just because you can do something doesn't mean we should be doing it. And just like there are legal checks on alcohol, narcotics, say what you want.
Increasingly at the state level, pornography, as there should be.
Thank you. Right. There's no reason we shouldn't be regulating this industry in similar regards.